Great. I'm going to hit the record button as well. Yep. And it's good to go.
Okay, thank you. According to the clock on my computer, it is now 5:30 on October 13th, 2021. This is the time and place for hearings before the hearings officer for the city of Salem. We have one thing on our agenda tonight. That's CU 21-04. My name is Jim Brewer. I'm the hearings officer for the city of Salem. I'm going to go through some procedural things. This hearing is obviously being conducted virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Testimony from neighborhood organizations, person in favor or in opposition is limited to those who signed in before 3 p.m. And I think only the applicant did that. The order of tonight's proceeding will be a staff report to be presented by Brendan Pike. The applicant's presentation, we'll limit that in time to 15 minutes. You're not required to take all of it, but you certainly have that available. My understanding is that we don't have anyone from a neighborhood association, and we don't have anyone who has signed in before 3. So we won't take testimony in favor, in opposition, or neutral because nobody has signed in. That means that the applicant won't get rebuttal either, which ordinarily would be limited in scope to those issues raised in opposition. At that point, we'll close the public hearing and move on. I'll direct people's attention to the applicable criteria found in the notice. The testimony and evidence for the public hearing must be directed towards these criteria. For a conditional use pursuant to SRC 240.005 sub D, an application for a conditional use permit shall be granted if the following criteria are met. 1, the proposed use is allowed as a conditional use in the zone. 2, the reasonably likely adverse impacts of the use on the immediate neighborhood can be minimized through the imposition of conditions. And 3, the proposed use will be reasonably compatible with and have minimal impact on the livability or appropriate development of surrounding property. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city or other parties the opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So this is the time and place to raise something, or you may waive it, not be able to later. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any participant may request a continuance for the record to be held open for time, or for the record to be held open for time to address new materials presented in favor of the application. If you're going to make that request, please do it during your testimony so I can determine if a continuance is justified. For people who are online and are participating, are there any objections on jurisdictional grounds on the holding of this hearing? Meaning it's not the kind of thing I would be in front of the hearings officer. And I heard a no, thank you. This is CU 21-04, 3323 Market Street Northeast, Salem, Oregon 97301. Could we have the staff report, Brandon?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen here. Okay, are you all seeing
yes, thank you.
The first slide? Okay. All right, well, good evening. My name is Brandon Pike. I'm a planner with the Community Development Department at the City of Salem. Tonight, we're here to discuss conditional use case number CU 21-04 for 3323 Market Street Northeast. At this time, I'd like to request that the staff report, attachments, and this presentation be entered into the record.
And they are entered in the record. Thank you.
Excellent. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow the subject property to be used as a motor vehicle sales lot. The property was previously used as a drive-through coffee kiosk. The application was filed in July of this year and deemed complete in September. The state mandated 120-day decision deadline is January 6th of next year. The applicant and staff have met procedural requirements. Here's a vicinity map of the subject property and surrounding area. The property is approximately 0.23 acres in size. It's fairly small. It has frontage on one street, Market Street, to the south there. The property takes access through an access easement to the west through the neighboring hotel property, which ultimately provides access to Market Street as well as 32nd Place, northeast over here. Also in the vicinity, you have Interstate 5, just a short distance over here to the east. Here's a zoning map of the vicinity. The subject property is zoned CR, or retail commercial, shown here in red. It abuts other CR land to the north, east, and west, and the Market Street right-of-way to the south. Other properties in the vicinity are also zoned CR, along with RM2, multifamily residential, and RS, single-family residential. Those are kind of the dominant zones in the area. Here's an aerial image or bird's eye view of the area from earlier this year, looking down towards the property and to the north. So there's one existing building on the property, along with parking and circulation areas for the previously used coffee kiosk. The property is surrounded by the Holiday Inn Hotel to the west over here, a park and ride facility to the north and the east, and the right-of-way of Market Street to the south. The general vicinity contains mostly commercial uses such as restaurants, offices, hotels, and other car lots. This is the applicant's existing site plan. The proposal calls for the use of the existing parking lot configuration and a change of use ultimately for the existing building, which was again used as a coffee kiosk in the past. The applicant is not proposing to make changes to the existing site characteristics, although during staff's review of the proposal, we noticed that the existing conditions site plan that was submitted by the applicant's representative doesn't quite match what was approved under the last site plan review application and what's currently in place at the property. So here we have a side-by-side comparison of the two plans. Both of these were included as attachments in the staff report, with the applicant's submitted existing site plan on the left and then the previously approved plan on the right here. So the main difference is just basically striping on the pavement for the vehicle circulation area. So staff's recommended condition 2, which I'll highlight again later in the presentation, would require that the applicant provide a site plan at the time of site plan review application, which will be further down the road after this conditional use application. And it would be required that they show that the proposal will maintain the existing parking lot configuration approved under the last site plan review application, or if they would rather, the condition would also allow them to obtain the necessary approval to reconfigure it, if that's ultimately what they want to do. Here's a view of the property from the sidewalk along Market Street. Again, the applicant doesn't propose any changes to the site's physical characteristics. The proposal would just allow motor vehicle sales to occur on the site. For reference, you can see the Holiday Inn in the background. Here's another view of the property from Market Street. Staff found that the proposal meets the conditional use approval criteria. Motor vehicle sales is allowed with conditional use approval in the CR zone. The the reasonable likely adverse impacts of the use on the immediate neighborhood can be minimized through the imposition of conditions as described in the staff report. And then finally, as also described in the staff report and the applicant's written statement, the proposed development will be reasonably compatible with and have minimal impact on the livability or appropriate development of surrounding property. In terms of testimony received, one neighborhood association, NESCA, and one citizen submitted comments in opposition. Their concerns were based on traffic impacts from the proposed use, impacts to the adjacent hotel, which gives vehicular access to the subject property, as well as proximity to other motor vehicle sales lots. So in other words, they argue that there's already enough car lots in this part of town. Staff notes that the traffic engineers with the city's Public Works Department reviewed the application and indicated the existing street system is adequate to serve the proposed development, and they had no concerns over the amount of traffic produced by the proposed use, excuse me. Staff also notes that proximity to other similar uses, the nearby car lots, actually seems to suggest compatibility between the proposed use and the surrounding area. Since criterion 3 of the approval criteria states that a conditional use permit shall be granted if the proposed use will be reasonably compatible with and have minimal impact on the livability or appropriate development of surrounding property. In terms of city and public agency comments, the Building and Safety Division and Public Works Department at the city reviewed the proposal and indicated no concerns. And the fire department noted that approved fire department access and water supply will be required for any structures. So in summary, staff recommends approval of the request subject to the conditions shown here. Again, condition 1 would ensure landscaping is maintained as required under the SRC. Site visits and aerial imagery indicate some of the existing landscaping hasn't quite been maintained. So this condition would ensure the site remains attractive and have minimal impact on the surrounding area. Condition 2 would require the applicant to maintain the existing parking lot configuration as previously discussed, or to obtain the necessary approval to reconfigure the parking area. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm now available to answer questions.
So I have a couple. The first one is, do you know what the distance is from Hawthorne to the hotel's drive?
The hotel's drive, not off the top of my head, but I could probably find it for you real quick.
Okay.
I have to exit out of this.
Nice plans.
Sorry. Let me do a quick measurement here. Center line to center line, roughly 380, 390 feet.
Yeah, it looked like it was a pretty good distance, and it would seem like impacts onto that street are going to be pretty minimal. As we think about the change itself to this use and the impacts from it, as I think about the existing use being a drive-through coffee kiosk, it would seem like that would be a more intensive traffic generator with more likely trips per day than a car sales lot. Am I missing something there?
I'd have to double check with the traffic engineers, but that's my understanding as well. I don't know the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very, a very complete report. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
No, I'd like to concur with the staff report and make myself available for any questions you might have.
Okay, Ron, would you go ahead and state your name and address
Yeah.
so we've got it on the recording?
Yes, my name is Ronald Ped. I reside at 6850 Burnett Street Southeast in Salem, Oregon, 97317.
Any thoughts on my question to Brandon about the relative intensity of drive-through coffee traffic compared to car sales?
Used car sales are almost imperceivable. Oftentimes the ITE manual will project that you should be able to have X number of trips based on square footage or acreage or whatever like that. Frankly, most car dealers would kill if the city would guarantee that amount of traffic, they would gladly write a check for it. But it's relatively insignificant. The big time that you have traffic is generally on weekends, off-peak hours as far as traffic.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. The other question, I think, from the neighborhood associations, impacts on the hotel. And I'm not entirely sure what that meant. Again, it would seem like the amount of traffic using that private easement or access across the hotel property compared to a drive-through coffee is going to be less. Any thoughts on that?
Well, in fact, that was part of the reason why the coffee kiosk never, I mean, that's a good location for a coffee kiosk. It's on the right side of the street. It's on a high volume arterial, and the previous operator and the hotel could not get together and agree that that was a good thing to do.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions for you. If there's anything else you'd like to tell me, that would be fine.
Not really, no.
Okay. I'm supposed to ask you if the applicant waives the additional 7-day period to provide additional written argument.
No. Yes, we would waive it.
Okay. Okay, with that, the hearing is closed, the record is closed. Thank you. It'll probably take me 10 days to get a written decision out. But I'll tell you, this is going to be approved. It meets the criteria.
Okay.
So thank you, Brandon. Nice job. Thank you, Zachary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, that is all that we have on the agenda tonight.
Wonderful.
So thank you for participating and good night.
All right. Thank you all.